Essentially, mineral rights is the ownership of land that's under the ground, and that land is associated with the production of oil and gas, and then the oil companies will pay you a royalty of that production because you own the land.
When you mean you own the land, but your income is going to come from the oil that they're going to bring
Correct.
out of the gas. How do you know that land that you're buying has gas on it?
So I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. I was an entrepreneur myself. I owned a sign company for 4 years.
A what?
A sign company. So signs and graphics.
Okay.
Monuments. Yeah. And so I built myself up into an accredited investor, but my family had been in real estate as well. And so they had little single family homes and things like that they did. They were involved in a group that taught financial freedom.
Okay.
So they started, when I was younger, they started bringing me to these groups, and I was exposed to what financial freedom was and what it meant. And then I started looking for opportunities and ways to build that at a younger age. And so through my business, I became accredited, and I found through that group, Eckerd Enterprises, and saw, well, I've got my hands full with family, with work, with everything else. I don't have time to chase after renters or fix toilets.
Mm-hmm.
And so with this being a truly passive investment, this was perfect for me.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Estamos en un episodio más de Real Estate Talks. Seguimos en la conferencia de Investor. Es una conferencia que se hace anual para todas las mujeres que están metidas en real estate, y obviamente Lala y yo no nos podíamos perder la oportunidad, sobre todo porque es aquí en Austin. Hemos conocido muchísima gente y bueno, muchas de ellas las quisimos traer al podcast porque son temas muy interesantes que queremos aprender.
Así es, Gaby, estamos muy contentas de estar aquí. Es la conferencia más grande de real estate de mujeres en Estados Unidos. Ahorita está aquí es en el Barton Creek Hotel, Omni Hotel en Austin. Y bueno, tenemos a una gran invitada, tenemos a Mallory Smith. Mallory habla inglés, vamos a hacer ese podcast en inglés, pero nos pareció muy relevante traerla porque nos va a hablar de una gran oportunidad de inversión relacionada con real estate, que es la inversión en oil and gas o mineral rights. Entonces la voy a presentar, vamos a escuchar. Ella está en Spanglish y ahora a inglés. Hi Mallory, how are you?
Doing great. How are y'all doing?
Very good, thank you. This Texas weather, humidity, but all good.
Thank you, Mallory, for being here. I was talking to Mallory yesterday about, I've never heard of it. I know a lot of people in real estate are probably familiar with it, but it's a topic that I was really interested on it, and investing in mineral rights as a real estate.
Yes.
Would you explain us the concept?
Yes. So essentially, mineral rights is the ownership of land that's under the ground, and that land is associated with the production of oil and gas, and then the oil companies will pay you a royalty of that production because you own the land.
So when you mean you own the land, but your income is going to come from the oil that they're going to bring
Correct.
out of the gas. How do you know that land that you're buying has gas on it?
So that requires some research. So our team at Eckerd Enterprises, we actually have a full team of geologists, engineers, landmen, and so we actually do extensive research into the land that we purchase beforehand, and then we actually have a very tight buy box. When we are selecting land to purchase, it's specifically in the Texas and Oklahoma area because we know they're very friendly to oil and gas operators. We buy land that already has an active well on it. And so it's already producing, it's already creating cash flow from day one. But we know that based on our experience, they're going to come back and they're going to add more wells, which is going to increase the cash flow over time.
What if they drill and there's no gas or oil?
So right now they have about a 97% success rate of drilling good wells right now. Early 2000s and before that, there was a high risk of them drilling and not finding oil. We call that a dry hole. These days, it doesn't really happen as much anymore because we have technology. We have more expertise of where we're going and what we're doing.
Yeah, so we were talking offline about, I told you a bit that I do mainly multifamily. I have invested mainly multifamily. I own a real estate fund. And we were actually looking at an oil and gas operator. But we are still betting because we need to understand the risk associated to investing like that really, really well in order to put that type of investment through our investor base. So can you explain a little bit about the risks that are associated to that?
Sure. So when I talk about risks, I like to talk about mineral rights in one bucket, and then you have working interest, which is the actual drilling of the well, in a different bucket. So there's not a whole lot of risks associated with mineral rights. You really can't lose the value of the land that you have because there's oil underneath that land. It's not going away. So that's your equity if you think about it in real estate terms. And then the production on top of that land is your cash flow. So you always have your equity, you don't lose it. And I guess the most front of mind risk is say they find an alternative form of fuel for transportation tomorrow. Well, that's great. Maybe it'll be great for the economy or for the environment, but there's still so many things in our daily lives that are made out of oil and gas that we wear, that we use, like even a Tesla is 80% made of oil.
Wow.
You know, so it's the demand is not going anywhere. And so the demand for your land and the value of your land is not going anywhere either. Now, on the working interest side, so there's some great tax advantages to it. So when you put an investment into working interest in the drilling of the well, you actually get an 80% deferment against active income for that investment.
Would you explain a little that further?
Yes, yeah. So say you put $25,000 into a working interest, so the drilling of a well. So you're not going to be doing anything, you're just the investor. And there is an operator who is going to handle all of the drilling, and they say this well is going to cost $10 million, and you're putting your $25,000 in for that. You can take $20,000 of that and actually use that against your active income of whatever W-2 or anything else that you have as a deferment. So it's a deferment because you expect for that well that you're operating with, that you're drilling, to actually make an income later on. So you'll pay the taxes on that income. But for that year, that time being, that $20,000 can defer taxes.
Okay,
Depreciation.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, I just want to go back to that again.
Yes.
For our audience and for ourselves. So when you say active income, so you said W-2. So I work at Amazon in Austin. I'm just giving you. No, I don't. I have a lot of friends that do. I'm just giving you like a real example.
Yeah.
I have a good check, whatever. So I mean, like a good check, and that's my active income.
Yes.
And so I have some spare money to invest. I invest in oil and gas. I put 25,000. 20. So, and I get a lot of deductions. My company takes a lot of, because I have to pay taxes for what I make.
Sure.
Those 20,000. Why not the 25,000? Why did you mention
80%?
80%. Okay, so those 20,000, they can help me to not get a deduction of that amount in my active income.
It's exactly like you said. It's like bonus depreciation. So it is against your active income. So that's $20,000 less that you would pay taxes on from your active income because it cancels out. Now, granted, I'm not a CPA.
No, I know. Yes,
We have to.
You have to mention
disclaimer. We do it all the
and
time.
each person has to check with their personal finance CPA advisor because we don't know. Each person has a different tax.
Yeah. But this
treatment.
is something I've used personally in my life. And
Yes.
so it is an option for
super
people who
powerful.
have capital gains, for people who have high income. It's very powerful. But there are more risks. And that's the reason that the government gives you that 80% deduction, is because you understand the risks as a sophisticated accredited investor. And
So these opportunities only open to accredited investors?
Correct.
Okay, perfect.
Yes. Yeah. Both sides, working interest and the mineral rights.
Okay.
Yes.
Why did you pick this niche? Like, how do you start in real estate, and why mineral rights?
So I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. I was an entrepreneur myself. I owned a sign company for 4 years.
A what?
A sign company. So signs and graphics.
Okay.
Monuments. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I built myself up into an accredited investor, but my family had been in real estate as well. And so they had little single family homes and things like that they did. And they were involved in a group that taught financial freedom.
Okay.
And so they started, when I was younger, they started bringing me to these groups, and I was exposed to what financial freedom was and what it meant. And then I started looking for opportunities and ways to build that at a younger age. And so through my business, I became accredited, and I found through that group Eckerd Enterprises, and saw, well, I've got my hands full with family, with work, with everything else. I don't have time to chase after renters or fix toilets. And so with this being a truly passive investment, this was perfect for me.
So when you were talking or explaining to me that this worked like you guys go find a big piece of land, and then we divide it, and each, like I want to invest, let's just, for easy numbers, let's say this $25,000, and I get my little piece of the pie. That's only mine. So I'll get distributions according to the amount of oil that is, or gas that is found. And then let's say I never want to sell it.
Yes.
I want to keep it. Can I pass it on to my
Absolutely.
kids?
This is a true legacy asset, because you never have to pay any more to hold it. There's no holding costs. You don't have to worry about interest rates going up because it's already bought and paid for. You don't have to worry about insurance going up and messing with the numbers because there is no insurance. It's just land. And so this is something that will last for as long as we have oil, which is going to be over 400 years from now. So you don't even worry about it at that point. So essentially, if you look at it, each well is going to last somewhere between 25 and 75 years. And then they're going to continue and add more wells on your land to regenerate the fresh cash flow and the consistent cash flow.
And what's the expected cash flow on these type of investments?
So we try and keep a very conservative cash flow model. So it's based on a 5-year term because we want people to think of this as a long-term asset. Mm-hmm. So over a course of 5 years, you can expect an average cash-on-cash return of 10% annually.
Okay.
And so some years, so early on, typically they haven't added more wells yet. They haven't increased that cash flow. It might be less than 10%.
Okay.
When they add those wells, it might be 20%. So it fluctuates, but we know that across a 5-year term, on average, it'll be about 10. Mm-hmm. Now, the reality is across our 94 portfolios that we have right now, the average annually is actually closer to 15%.
15.
Yes, because there were times in 2022 when oil and gas prices were high after the start of the Russian war. Last year, they were a little bit subdued. So it just depends. The commodity prices will fluctuate, but long term, it's a really great asset that's going to keep up and often exceed inflation.
And especially for like diversification, like I see it as, I was telling you that I have a self-directed IRA that I just cash some money out of another investment, and I was thinking, okay, where I'm going to put it. And when you're already involved in different ones, it's like, okay, that sounds really interesting. Just to have different your eggs in different baskets,
I always say, because diversification is everything, so it's important. And but there's not an upside. Like, how in multifamily or commercial assets, normally you get like a certain cash flow, cash on cash, and then there's an upside when you sell the asset. Is there an upside for oil and gas investment or not?
So the upside is that you still own it, and then long after it's paid for, it's going to continue to cash flow, and it's not costing you anything.
Okay, so after the 5 years, so say that I want to invest. First of all, what's the minimum investment amount?
Right. So our average investor will do about $500,000 with us over a 2-year time period. Mm-hmm. Typically, they'll start out with about $50,000 or so, and they might put that between 2 projects. And so it's in increments. It's depending on what you're available to do, what's comfortable for you, what kind of returns you're looking for.
But you don't have a minimum?
The minimum would be about $50,000.
50,000. Okay. So say I have 50,000. I invested with you. Mm-hmm. You're going to give them back to me. I start getting distributions or rents or however you might call them. When?
6 months after your investment date. So after the project is fully funded and closed, you have a 6-month time period. And what occurs during that time is that we are communicating with the oil company saying, here are the new owners of this property. Here is everybody who is entitled to the checks of this production. That production is going to continue throughout the 6 months. So we're going to aggregate that once the oil companies recognize us as the new owners and start to send us checks. So on month 6, they're going to send us a larger check that's reflective of those 6 months. After that, it's going to be a monthly distribution that's reflective of 1 month worth of production.
Gotcha.
Okay, so those 6 months, we are still going to receive something for that later.
It's aggregating, you just haven't received it.
I understand.
Yes.
Okay, and then after that, you're going to return my first the $50K I invested after 5 years?
So with 10% average over 5 years, you will be about 50% there. We say that conservatively. So remember that you always have the equity in your land in addition to that cash flow. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, you could have more production that generates more than the 50%. So we've actually had 3 packages in the 5-year term that have paid out over 100% in under 4 years. So it's really depending on when the oil companies choose to put new wells on your land and what the commodity prices are at that time that dictates the exact return. Those things are out of our control. But as long as y'all are educated as investors and we do our job of making sure that you understand what the investment is, then we can prepare you for those expectations.
But that is out of my control and out of your control.
Right.
Okay.
That's what makes it truly passive.
Yes, you're right.
And like anything.
You can have everything.
Even multifamily, single family. I
want control, but I want passive. No. No.
We could choose,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but so here's the other thing. So a lot of syndications that you do, it's a preferred return, right?
Yes.
And so you hope that the numbers continue to work. You hope that the operator is doing everything that they should, but it's more of an IOU. This is your money every single month. You're going to get a check every single month. It's going to vary in amounts, but it's guaranteed.
Can you get out?
You can. So what we've done, we have about 2,000 investors right now, a little over that at this point. And things happen, right? So there's divorces, there's cash calls that happen in other real estate investments. People get in binds and they need money. And what happens, sadly, is a lot of times they'll sell the things that are performing because that's what they can get the most money for.
Yeah.
And so people have come to us and say, I'm in a bind, I need money. So what we did was we created a peer-to-peer market.
Okay.
And so out of our 2,000 plus investors, you can put your properties on the market and then they will bid. Sometimes they bid higher because it's a really hot property and people like it. Sometimes they'll bid lower because we're all smart investors and we want a deal. But there is an exit, but it's within our community. It would be very difficult to sell mineral rights to just anybody because not everybody understands.
Yeah,
But we wanted
and
to
it's
make-
regulated. You have to be accredited. There's a process.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One question. I know it's a lot of players in your arena. A lot of companies, they offer the same as you. If a person is thinking about that, what they should be looking for in a company to see, okay, this is a good company to invest on?
Sure. So on the mineral rights side, a lot of the companies that were our competition are no longer there. Because what makes us different is that we're cash buyers. We don't have any debt within our company and we don't believe in it. And we believe so much in the land and the minerals that we're buying is that we actually go out and buy that ahead of time before we sell it to our investors. If we never sell another mineral, we're happy to hold that because we know it's going to make money. But we do that in order to be more competitive in the market when we're buying minerals. And so that we have a reputation of closing on time, paying cash for our deals, and that allows us to get better rates as well.
And that also de-risks the investment, like...
For you, yes.
Yeah, for us.
And
Not
we're-
for us,
and
not
we're-
for you.
And we're completely comfortable with it because we understand and we know what we're buying. And so that just shows our investors that we know what we're doing and we believe in it. And so a lot of our competition, when the interest rates started rising, they were relying on debt to do the same thing. And so once the interest rates rose, it didn't make sense anymore and they exited the market. So there really is not a whole lot of competition for buying side on minerals for us. Now, if you're talking about people who are selling working interest, that is something that we encourage people to ask a lot of questions because
That's a difference. Would you explain the difference?
So the working interest is the drilling side, the one with all the tax advantages. So a lot of people will chase that because they say, I have taxes that I don't want to pay, and they let the tax tail wag the dog, essentially.
Yeah.
And so they're willing to put their money with people before doing a full due diligence. And that's gotten a lot of people burned, and it's given the oil and gas industry a bad name because of it. And so that's why we up front believe in educating, and we're very selective about the working interest in the drilling projects that we get into before we ever offer it to any of our investors because the economics need to make sense. And so that's what makes us different. That's what makes us, different than our competition is that we would rather you not buy working interest with us because we would want you to understand the risks first and we would want you to be an educated investor. And a lot of our competition is not doing the same thing.
So I just want to interrupt you. Maybe I didn't get it right, but that makes me think that the audience could have the same thing. So
Sure.
It's working interest and then it's the land.
Yes.
Two different things.
Two different things. They're both oil and gas investments.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you pick and choose, or it's when you invest, it's half and half, or how does that
Pick
work?
and choose. And so we encourage people to start with mineral rights for us because
Which is the land.
the land.
Okay.
Yes. So start with the land because there are virtually no risks, and we want you to get to know us and to understand us and to learn from us before you jump into the riskier investments.
And if it's a 5-year term, what you're thinking, can I get my money after 5 years without going through that secondary market process? And yes.
So it's just like if you were to buy a house. If you buy a house and you have direct ownership of that house, how do you exit?
Yes, you have to sell.
You have to
You have to
and
sell.
you have to do the work that requires selling.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
But
Got
can
it.
you do the land, and then while you add it, let's say next year I have another bonus or something, and then I can start on the other one, on
Yes.
the working. Okay.
Yes, and you could do, when it becomes available, you could do either one. So we typically have about one package per month. offering, because there's lots of good deals out there right now as far as available for us to purchase. And so we're coming out with somewhere between 12 to 15 packages per year. So there's always an opportunity to buy mineral rights. It's the working interest that can be a little bit more scarce because we're very picky.
So then we move to the other part. So that was the land, understood, and all that we've talked mainly about the distributions, and that applies to the land. Does the same thing apply to the working interest?
Working interest actually has higher rates of return.
Can you elaborate on that?
It depends.
Working interest. First, define. Okay, it's the drilling.
The drilling. So investing in the drilling side.
On someone that has a big drills, and that they are doing this because they need money to buy the equipment, right?
Well, yeah.
And to go, and the people and employees and the
it costs about $10 million to drill one well.
Okay.
So that's why these oil companies are worth billions of dollars. They've got cash flows of millions of dollars because they're drilling hundreds of wells in a given year. And so that's why they need, in order to continue to operate, to continue that cash flow, they need to bring investors like us in to join them on these operations.
How's this different? So this is not a real estate investment. It's like a debt.
It is not a real estate investment in the working interest side.
It isn't. It's like a debt. It's a debt.
Yeah.
It's a venture.
A venture. Yeah, it's a venture. It's like a startup, a company. When you invest in a company, you invest in a driller.
But that's why you recommend to start with the land, because the land is like the first step.
Safer,
then to
maybe.
learn,
Yes.
it's a lot about education. You have to learn how these people operate, trust them before you even put extra money on.
And that's what we encourage. And
Yes.
we're very transparent. We love it when people ask us questions. We say, all right, give me anything you want. Like ask me anything you want, because even if you never invest with us, we want to make sure that we can give you materials and questions to ask everybody else too.
No, and the more you educate people, you also help for people not to get burned and not to mess with the reputation of your niche.
And that's why we have a very high retention rate amongst the people that do invest with us. Is because we help them in all of these other areas of real estate. We have a lot of knowledge in our company in a lot of areas outside of oil and gas as well. And so we've really built a community amongst the people that are investing with us so that we can all learn together.
Okay. Maybe you're not gonna like these questions, but tell me a horror story in your industry.
Okay. So there was a Ponzi scheme that we learned about last year. It was basically carbon sequestration. So they're going to capture carbon to help the environment that's associated with, anything that produces carbon. And they've got this technology to do it, and everybody puts millions and millions of dollars into that. Well, they never asked questions. They never asked to see the equipment. They never did any due diligence, and it never existed. And so, but because they assumed that it was associated with oil and gas, they're like, oh, well, this is an oil and gas Ponzi scheme. It really had nothing to do with oil and gas. It was just someone who created.
They mentioned a mineral and they just associated with it.
They talked about drilling. They talked about oil, and here's carbon that's created because of that. We're going to save the world and capture it, but it never existed.
Yeah, well, they're bad seeds in any industry.
Sure,
you just have to ask a lot of questions and learn.
And then we'll probably have to talk about this on another podcast. But once you're involved in the investment industry, for me, it's surprising. I mean, coming from Mexico, I grew up in Mexico, basically. And now that I'm pretty involved in the investing arena, you see like people investing in car washes, people investing in ATMs, people investing in oil and gas, people investing in multifamily. So I feel like that community that I'm involved in, you hear a lot of different stuff.
Well, the other thing that happens with the drilling side, the working interest investments, the reason that we don't have a whole lot of it is because we're very picky. Everybody has tax problems right now. Everybody's taxes are going up because, thankfully we're making money, right? But they're looking for ways to help with their tax problems. And so they'll go into a working interest deal, and there's a competition for it. The working interest deals are getting bid up. We will not follow that. We have a limit because we will not participate in something where the numbers don't work. A lot of times these get bid up above the point where it's economical, and you won't see your money back in over 10 years. We refuse to do that. Well, on top of that, these people who are winning these bids that are overpriced are adding fees on top of it that they make those fees up front. They don't care how long it takes to make money back, if it ever does. And so that's why the industry has a really bad name, is because people are using the taxes to lure people in and then creating deals that just don't make sense economically. Yeah. And at the end of the day, we're all in this to make money in an investment.
Yes, and everyone is selling like huge returns. Like I'm being confronted to this a lot, like huge returns, and everyone says that they have the best deal, and everyone. So that's why right now my investor group is like, okay, Lala, what else do you have? But for us, it's like it takes a lot of time to actually bet and see who is the right operator and stuff, and the right asset class. And I do believe in diversification and we've been hearing our stories, you know. Last night we were talking about one, and so Mallory, I cannot thank you enough for sharing this opportunity to our investors. It's great to have you here, and
we're going to leave all the information about your company and your name, so if you want to reach out and ask more questions, and hopefully we can have you back in the podcast.
I'd love to. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Welcome. I'm Lala Elizondo.
And this is Gaby Proctor.
And this is Real Estate Talks.
Si llegaste hasta aquí es porque te gustó la información y estás interesado en invertir en real estate en Estados Unidos.
Para esto hemos creado un entrenamiento que te va a simplificar este camino, ya sea que seas un inversionista por primera vez o que seas un inversionista sofisticado.
En la descripción de este episodio está la liga que te llevará a este entrenamiento.
O bien búscanos en Instagram como @invierte con Lala y Gaby y comenta con la palabra invertir en cualquiera de nuestras publicaciones y así te mandamos la liga a este entrenamiento.
Muchísimas gracias por habernos escuchado. Nos vemos en el siguiente. Escucha un episodio nuevo de Real Estate Talks cada semana.
En tu plataforma favorita para escuchar podcasts.
Ponte en contacto con nosotros en lalaygaby.com.